Okay. Um, I now call this meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining. I would ask you and remind you to turn off your cell phones or silence your electronic devices. I have asked City Council Member Bowman to please give our invocation.
Let's pray. Father God, we thank you for this day you blessed us with. We pray for balanced hearts, O God, that we may make good for the best of the people here, O God, and that this betterment be all to your glory, and that the people here will have better lives, and that we will be blessed for helping them. We thank you most of all for your Son, Jesus, and it's in your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Now let's please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Anyone that wishes to be heard on the items not on the agenda can turn in a form to the city clerk, and I believe it's in the back. I will now read the Government Day Proclamation. Whereas city government is the government closest to most citizens and the one with the most direct daily impact upon its residents, and whereas city government is administered for and by its citizens and is dependent upon public commitment to and understanding of its many responsibilities, and whereas city government officials and employees share the responsibilities to pass along their understanding of public services and their benefits, and whereas Florida City Government Day is a very important time to recognize the important role played by city government in our lives. Whereas this day, October 21st, 2021, offers an important opportunity to spread the word to all citizens of Florida that they can shape and influence this branch of government which is closest to the people. And whereas the city of Temple Terrace and Florida College have joined together to teach students and other citizens about municipal government through a variety of different projects and information. And whereas Florida City Government Day offers an important opportunity to convey to all the students of Florida College that they can shape and influence government through their civic involvement. Now, therefore, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Temple Terrace, Florida, do hereby proclamation as follows. Section 1, that the city of Temple Terrace does encourage all citizens, city government officials, and employees to do everything possible to ensure that Florida City Government Day, October 21st, 2021, is recognized and celebrated accordingly, and that the city of Temple Terrace does encourage educational partnerships between city government and schools such as Florida. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused and fixed the great seal of the city of Temple Terrace to be affixed at Temple Terrace, Florida, this day, this 21st day of October 2021. All those who wish to be heard on items not listed on the agenda will, on the agenda for this 30-minute time limit for all public comment, will be continued at the end of the meeting if more time is needed. A 3-minute time limit will be imposed on all comments from the public. Individual members of the public who are present in the audience may designate in writing a representative to speak on their behalf, not extending beyond a 10-minute period. Speakers must come to the podium and state their name and city of residence. And during public comment on items not on the agenda, the city manager and directors in attendance do make note of these items. During the city manager's report later in the agenda, the city manager may make a comment on the items a person brings up or where further research is necessary. She or staff that the city manager assigns to this will reach back to our residents. And all residents' comments are taken seriously and will be followed up with. Now we will have our council business, starting with our tree protection from the city attorney. The city attorney will now speak from the days and present present the issue.
Can I speak from here, or do I go?
I think it's
Well, council, the issue is really quite simple when you look at it. The state decided that they know better about our city than we do. And obviously, all the trees that are in Tallahassee are all the same ones here. There's no difference to any situation. And so, since they know better, they wrote a very simple law. There's only 3 lines or 3 sections to it really here. And it really does look like they spent a lot of time on it and really took every opportunity to consider how the law would affect this. They did not. Unfortunately, though, there's not a lot that we can do about it. There is a couple of things, though. As a city, what we have available to us is this, basically. The way that the law is written, it's not very specific about what this residential property is that they're talking about. So basically, the text reads, a local government may not require a notice, application, approval, permit, fee, or mitigation for the pruning, trimming, or removal of a tree on residential property. That is, if the property owner obtains documentation from an arborist certified by this International Society of Arboriculture or a Florida licensed landscape architect that the tree presents a danger to persons or property. So, what I propose is that the city make an ordinance specifying that the residential, for the purposes of this law for tree removal, residential property be labeled property that has a residential building already built upon it. Because what this will do is prevent developers taking land that they purchased that has nothing built on it and using this law as kind of a free reign to just raise and destroy everything that's on there. This will not prevent, the homeowner from taking their own initiative to cut down a tree that maybe doesn't need to be cut down, but this will cut down on the mass destruction of trees due to the way that this law is kind of set free some developers.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the public to be made? All right. Council members, do you have any questions? Do we have a motion on whether or not to move forward with this issue and agree with our city attorney or not?
I'll motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. What is the motion, correct? What are you motioning?
I motion to go along with what our city attorney has proposed that we choose to do instead of the state ordinance, or what's been passed down from the state.
Okay. How do we vote? Or I guess say aye for yes and nay for no. Okay.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Okay. The city council has agreed unanimously with you, city attorney. Thank you. Our second issue is health insurance premiums from our city manager.
Good morning. I'm Audra speaking on behalf of the manager's office. So the issue I'm bringing before you today is the health insurance premiums, which are going up. This is due in large part to the issues caused by COVID and both hospitals being overrun. And then people who were not going to the doctor's office regularly during COVID because they were closed, and also delaying their elective care. That's all happening now, which is increasing our health insurance premiums. Now, the actual cost increase is not something we can really control. That's set by the insurance companies. However, there are a couple things we can do to try to keep our costs from continuing to go up as we go into the future. The main thing I would like to propose today is looking into more ways to educate employees on ways that they can both seek preventative care and also seek out cheaper options, which will prevent our premiums from continuing to rise. So preventative care, these are things like having welfare days, having them go and seek out regular physicals, and just generally taking advantage of their own health. Some of this are things that are currently worked into our policies. For example, I believe currently we use United, and with that, there's different ways that they can go and do rewards, where if they hit certain milestones, then they can earn rewards, but not a lot of the employees know about this, so they're not taking advantage of it. So what I'm proposing is finding ways to educate employees on that, and then also looking into cheaper options. For example, rather than going to the emergency room for every issue, going to urgent care first, it's about half the cost, and the less money that the insurance company has to spend on our healthcare, the less money they will continue to charge us for the healthcare. So overall, that is my proposal: is educating employees on both preventative care and how to seek cheaper options.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the public at this time? Yes.
Jeannie Barlow, 11250 North 56th Street. I'm an employee here and I make $15 an hour. I have to put my husband and children on my health insurance. Are you planning to pass this cost on to the city employees?
Hear, hear.
That is something we will need to look into, and we will get back to the council with it.
We'll have to talk about it. That's a very good question.
Anyone else? Okay. Does our council have any questions for our city manager? Yes.
So with COVID and at the first offset, a lot of doctors' offices had to close and they lost a lot of business. And one could say that these new premiums, that although they're more expensive, they're making up for the lost profits of our doctors and the physicians and the nurses and all these people who worked at these offices so that they can get paid. So with this reduction in what they will be getting, how do you think that will offset the future of their health care? Because some people may have to be let go because of the lack of profits being made due to the lack of profit being made during COVID.
So are you asking, I'm sorry, I'm not really sure I understand your question.
This will probably lead to, in my opinion, layoffs because certain people will be cut due to these premiums. The upper premiums are being used to rescue doctors' offices from the financial losses of COVID. So do these layoffs, are they a worthy cost of your plan in your opinion?
So you're saying layoffs within the doctor's offices?
Yes.
Okay. That is kind of where I was saying the premiums are set by the health insurance companies, and that's why we would pay it and seek other ways to try to keep our costs down overall from our end, so that when it comes to the doctor's offices, and they will be able to make the same amount of money from the insurance company.
Thank you.
I have a question. You talked about your educational opportunities just to get this out. What would be your primary channel of education?
Things like having wellness fairs where all the employees, it'd be voluntary, but they can come and they can get checked up and go through and see all the different options they have available. And then things like just sending out informational packets explaining all the different options available and things like that.
Anyone else? All right. Does anyone have a motion to move forward with this issue at this time? Nobody. Okay. Do we have any more comments from our council? Okay. Well then, I guess we won't.
Julian, sometimes you gotta push them to make a motion, because if you don't have a motion, the thing dies. So sometimes you gotta ask them, why won't you make a motion? What's going on?
Why don't you make a motion?
My reason for abstaining goes a lot to Miss Jeannie Barlow's question about where this cost is going to go. And I'm not sure that we can rectify the cost of increasing these educational parameters without putting the money on the people, which is going to make them more upset than they are with the addition of these added premiums. I'm not sure where this money would come from without increasing taxes or funding some other source of revenue or the city selling something. And for that reason, I don't feel it economically justifiable.
That's a very good point. Do we have any?
Actually, Nathaniel, you cannot abstain unless you have a financial conflict. So, you abstain after the motion is made, like abstain from the vote, you know?
There's no motion to vote on, but I would say no if there was.
Can we make a motion to like further discuss it and like reconvene? Or is that's something you can do? What? Oh, I don't know either. Can we make a motion to like have another meeting about it? If they're not gonna, if we're not, nobody's gonna vote for it.
Okay, I don't think I'm supposed to be up here, but you guys are all stalled. If you don't make a motion, nothing happens. And so if nothing happens on this important issue, your city manager's wondering, what am I supposed to do? Because this is where we're supposed to go to provide health insurance. Sometimes, if there's inactivity here, you have to figure out what's the problem. You were good because you said, this is the reason I don't want to move this forward. So that was good. But what should happen now, or well, you decide what happens, but you could now take the basis of this and say, okay, well, what could we do? Because we have to do something. You've got employees that are counting on coverage. So you've got to do something to ensure. And if this solution is unsatisfactory to you, then there should be some questions to the city manager about what are the alternatives to this. What exactly is being asked of us if we don't like this solution? What other, but you can just choose to do nothing and move on, but I would suggest that that's probably not the best option because you have people that need health insurance. So you have to figure this out, and in real life you'll often get that deer in the headlight look where nobody wants to say exactly because I don't know what to do, I'm trying to think, but you've got to foster some discussion up here to try to figure out where to go.
I guess I have another question. Do you? Oh, go ahead.
I would like to request a workshop for this.
Is that your motion now, or is this a request? Okay.
That is a request.
Okay.
Council, you can go along with that, and certainly get some alternatives to kind of get to the bottom of it, or you can give the city manager direction to come up with some different solutions and report back at another meeting. Couple different options you can
Can I ask a question? I guess my one question at that workshop, would there be like a numbers meeting about the different alternatives and which each of them would cost? Okay,
Yeah, we could certainly look into that, provide that for you.
thank you. Well, I motion that we move forward and grant the request for the workshop.
I'll second that.
Okay, now we will vote. Aye.
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 Nay, but it doesn't matter. For the record.
Let the record show. Now we will be moving on to our third council business, firefighting hazards from our fire chief.
Hello, my name is Maggie Myers. I am representing the fire chief. So the problem that we're dealing with today is the problem of the health and safety problems with firefighters. So there is a 10% higher chance of firefighters contracting cancer than people who aren't firefighters. And also, there's a higher likelihood of firefighters dying of suicide than in the line of duty. There are various resources that are offered to firefighters, but they aren't aware of these, and also there is a stigma against getting help. And so what I move to do is we start a campaign, awareness campaign. So we could do a social media campaign, we could do billboards, posters, that kind of thing, to make sure that the public and the firefighters and the doctors who are taking care of the firefighters know that there is a higher chance of danger for these men and women. And I think the reason it's so important, because it would cost money to do this, but I think it's worth it because, for one, these men and women put their lives on the line daily for this city, and they walk into absolute danger knowing they might die, and they sacrifice themselves for the city every day, and the least we could do is help them and make them aware of the chances that they have to help themselves. And not only that, but if we help them and give them the resources they need to improve their health and also improve their mental health, then we have better workers and they can work more often, and the insurance costs less. So all in all, it may cost more originally, but it will pay itself out eventually.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the public? All right. Does our council have any questions? I have a question. Why is there this stigma to not get help from the fire department?
So I think the main thing is just that there's a stigma against therapy, that kind of thing, where asking for help kind of makes you feel weak, that kind of thing. And while we have made leaps and bounds in terms of lowering that stigma against mental health help, I think that having a campaign from the city itself saying that it's okay and that asking for help actually is not a weakness but a strength would help the firefighters feel more comfortable admitting that they need the help that they need.
With these extra services, would they be just like suicide prevention services, or they're like therapy, or would they be other alternatives?
Right. So the thing is that we already have a lot of resources for them. There are various organizations. There's I have written down a few websites for them. There's Moffitt.org, MOFFITT. They do a lot of cancer research, and they can help catch cancer early. And then there are FloridaFirefighterSafety.org. There's ValorServiceDogs.org. They offer free service dogs to men and women, sorry, who are first responders for free, and they can help with PTSD, that kind of thing. So the problem isn't resources themselves, it's more making sure that they're aware of them. So it wouldn't be paying for new doctors or anything like that, because those resources exist already. It'd be more making sure that the public and the firefighters and doctors are aware of them.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any more council questions.
Okay, so I have a question. So the basis of your question, or what you're asking of us, is are you just trying to help out with like the stigma behind, I guess, them going to therapy and things like that? So you just want like the advertising side from us and our support?
I think mainly that the stigma is a huge part of it, but I think also that they're just not aware of the resources that exist. So the awareness campaign would be combating that stigma, but also just making sure that the resources that exist are known. So just putting advertisements for the websites and that kind of thing.
I have a question. Based on your research, do you think that making firefighters and those going into that field more aware of the dangers would decrease the amount of firefighters we could have in the future?
I think that's possible, but I think that making sure that the firefighters we do have are taken care of is probably a greater improvement. It's a higher improvement than the possibility of lowering future volunteers or firefighters, because part of the reason that this is so important is that these men kind of know the danger they're going into when they become a firefighter.
Great. Anyone else? Okay, my last question is, do you think it would be more appropriate to have internal advertising and educational opportunities inside the fire department, or do we also need it outside of the fire department?
Right. So I think that having it within the fire department is also very important. But a main thing is that when firefighters go to like the doctor, most of the time doctors, when they hear a symptom of something like a stomach hurt or like headache or that kind of thing, they go to the most common source of it, right? So they don't immediately think cancer. But a lot of people don't know, I had no idea until I was researching it, that there's a 10% higher chance of firefighters contracting cancer. So there are annual checkups and that kind of thing for firefighters in place now. But I think that the public and there are other departments outside of firefighting, the department in firefighting, that need to be aware of the risks that firefighters go through.
Awesome, thank you. Does anybody have a motion this time?
I motion to accept the changes proposed.
I second.
Okay, do we have any comments before we vote?
I think that it's very important to, especially from the mental health side, I think it's really important to try to get rid of the stigma around looking for help with mental health. And I really like that that's something that you're pushing, and I think that I'm on board with that. I also think that there's an opportunity to expand the outreach of something like that to be something beyond even just firefighters, which I know isn't necessarily your particular issue. But I think that making changes like this could potentially allow us to do things like this with police officers or with, like first responders, like EMTs or people like that. I think that there's a lot of stress that goes on in those jobs that normal people aren't necessarily aware of, and that I think that the stigma on going to get help for your mental health with things like that is really important. So I think that this is a great opportunity to start a program like that we can then potentially expand into other parts of the workforce.
Anyone else? I would say that just like we should have it inside the fire department, also maybe in the future working with the medical professionals about education when they do have these checkups are important too. Okay, now we will go to a vote.
Aye.
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 Okay, of course, unanimous. Our next council business is the police department recruiting challenges from our police chief.
Good morning. My name is Cade Blunt, and I'm here on behalf of the police department. Across the last couple of years in our country, we have seen a big shift in perception of police and police force in general, not just here in City of Simple Terrace, but nationwide. But as it is nationwide, we do have our own challenges here in the city of Temple Terrace, which at the moment, while we have a almost completely staffed police department, we do have to look at this issue in future terms as well and see how this is going to affect our police department in the future. What I propose today is that we implement new campaigns to put out word that we need to be recruiting and how we do so. I believe right now we have only one major social media presence, and that would be on Facebook, and I believe that needs to be expanded into other platforms as well, such as Instagram and Twitter. If you look at the surrounding other departments, Hillsborough County and Tampa as well, they have a much more expanded social media presence than we do, and I believe that is hurting us in the recruitment field. I believe over time we could age officers out or such and have an issue with our staffing of police. I believe if we, in either a new position for the police department with a social media manager of some kind, or in a joint venture with the marketing department here at the city, could expand this and get the word out there, not just of, our officers doing the great things they do every day and upholding the values the city have, but just the benefits and stuff that come along with the job of an officer. I think it's oftentimes undersold how well our officers are paid, which is well within what other officers of other departments are paid in the area, and just the benefits they have of having that job.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the public? Yes.
Jeannie Barlow, 11250 North 56th Street. So you're talking about expanding social media and working to expand that presence. But we have a very limited department right now. We have one full-time. We've just had another one for this year's that's been budgeted. But are you talking about increasing their budget so they can work towards expanding this as was suggested? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right.
I guess to address what was just said, I believe we would need some expansion in the budget for it, for either a new position or to a new position within the marketing department to help with what we were proposing.
Thank you. Does our council have any questions?
Okay, I have a question for the chief of police. How much money exactly do you think would be needed as far as this? And as far as the social media presence, what would you like to see included in that to help with the recruitment process?
As far as the budget issue at the moment, I would need to do more research and get back to you with that as far as specific numbers go. But I believe just off what I can think of at the moment, we would need at least the budget for one full-time new staff member at a minimum. And as far as what would be shared on these social media platforms and stuff would be, one, positive interactions our officers are having with the community, and then also just general, stuff the police want the public to know, whether there's a situation going on in a certain part of the city that people need to avoid, putting that message out there, things of that nature.
Go ahead.
Just a clarifying question. You're saying that you have staff now. You're just trying to get out ahead of potential labor issues in the future. Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Okay.
So as far as recruitment, would that not be better suited for like a vocational school or in the schools? It seems like what you're doing with social media is you're just increasing community awareness of what you guys are doing to reduce the stigma against you.
Well, at the moment, we do most of the recruiting through the police academy here, and they already have a great relationship with that academy. But with the recent changes in culture and stuff across the last couple of years, the academy has had lower enrollment. So with putting out the social media campaign and things like that, we could increase the amount of people going to this academy that we recruit from.
I have a question. What are we doing in school systems, especially high school, to push enrollment in police academy?
At the moment, we have officers in our local schools who are there to be a presence on campus, to have interaction with, say, as you mentioned, high school students, and to show them these role models that these police officers are. That's what we are doing at the moment, and I think that is a great thing for us to be doing, and we can continue to do that in the future.
Do you think any further involvement, such as like after school activities or outreach programs, would do any more benefit than a social media plan, or do you think they're equal or lesser in value?
I think they are relatively equal in value because I think we don't need to look at just recruiting from, say, our high schools or our students, but people in the area who may not necessarily, enjoy the job they're at or are looking for more of a career instead of just a single job. Because I think oftentimes we undersell that being in the police force can be more of a career than just a job. There's room for advancement and there's, ways up, I guess, as you would normally call it, a corporate ladder, but in this case it's within the police force. And I think oftentimes we undersell that aspect. And so it's not just high school or, students we're necessarily looking to recruit, but more in general, just people who want to come serve the community and have a career serving the community.
And then last question, do you think that having a social media presence within the department of the police department, do you think that would be better than having it in a different department, being the communications department?
That would be the ideal situation, yes, just so there's more of a direct link of communication and it's all kept in-house and within one spot. As you know, the police department takes up the entirety of the third floor. And so having it there obviously would keep communication much clearer and easier to get in between and in and out.
Okay, thank you. Now, is anybody going to entertain a motion of whether or not to move forward with this issue?
I'll motion.
All right.
Can I clarify on what your motion is? Are you motioning to put a, kind of as he's suggesting, put a full-time social media person in the police department, or simply expand upon the marketing department that we already have to try and help support the police department? Or is it more big, or am I getting too detailed and it's more large scale than that?
I say we start by hiring on a person in the police department to help start those programs.
Okay. Does anybody second that motion?
Second.
Okay. Any comments?
I'm having a hard time personally, and I'd have to look at the budget, but I'm having a hard time justifying hiring a full-time social media person for just the police department in such a small city, I guess. Because of the limited budget, because of, the natural limits that we're working with. It's a little bit difficult for me to wrap my mind around having somebody with that specific of a job when we, could potentially use that money in different places. I am not against the idea of pushing the social media presence of the police department, because I think that getting out ahead of the hiring issue is a good thing. I think that looking ahead and thinking in the future and saying, okay, we're not having issues with this now, but could potentially have issues with this in the future, I think that's a good thing. But it's just the specifics of hiring a person specific to the police department for the social media thing is a little bit difficult for me to justify.
I think I agree with you there. Any more?
I agree with what the councilman said. I think it would be more ideal if we had this full-time employee not only be involved at their sole job be social media, because that's a job for influencers and other people. This person is working with a relatively small community, and to do a full-time social media page would kind of be a waste of money. But if this person was also involved in recruitment or other staffly duties, I could see the need of recruiting them, and then the social media page is their other job. But as far as one person just being entirely responsible for social media, that could be the work of someone else in the marketing department who has less work, and then they could be paid a little bit more extra just to do the work of the police department as well. I understand the need for an insider in the police department that is more familiar with those people, but I don't think budgetarily it makes sense coming from his standpoint.
Are we allowed to change the motion? Or are we allowed to challenge to change the motion?
That's entirely up to the maker of the motion.
Uh,
He can withdraw it, he can revise it, or he can stand pat where he is.
the high school I went to when I was younger, we hired on 2 police officers near the end of my time there. And not only did they provide much better security for the school, but they did an excellent job removing the negative stigma around police officers. And I sometimes have a hard time finding positive things to say about the police force online, which is a shame because they do so many things that we don't even know about. I mean, they're public servants at heart. I think that having a good social media presence for Temple Terrace is a good idea, and I'm open to revising to find a better, more efficient way to make that happen.
I have a comment as well. Going along with that, I think also since there is there can be the negative stigma around the police department, maybe having like the social media not necessarily come directly from the police force shows like that the police, I mean, from the public's viewpoint, that other people are seeing this. Like if it comes from like the city of Temple Terrace, it's different than coming straight from the police force. So maybe it'd be, not that anything would be stunted, but people would be less likely to like, or be more likely to believe what's going on in that. I think it'd be more powerful coming outside the police force than directly inside.
Like the city social media?
Yep.
Which would then just be an expansion upon the marketing department that we have. It would just be, I mean, there would definitely be money that would have to be put into it, but I think it would be more reasonable monetarily to do something like that than to hire a social media person for the police department.
Would you like to revise your motion, or?
Yes. How do I revise a motion?
You can A, withdraw it and make another motion, or you can revise it to add a person to the marketing department instead of the police department, if that's what you choose. Or you can stick with the motion you have. Sometimes it's easier to withdraw it and make another motion. If there's a lot of changes to it, it's easier to withdraw it and start again. But you can revise it if you want. Just keep in mind, if you change it in any way, it has to be seconded again.
I motion to revise it, to have the Temple Terrace Marketing Department be the main effort in this program.
Anybody?
I'll second that.
All right. I guess we have to ask for comments again, or no? Any more comments? All right. How do we vote?
Aye.
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 All right. Thank you. Our next item is our new business and board reports. And our first thing that we'll be covering is developing recreational facilities with our leisure service director.
Hi, I'm Josh Rainwater. I'm representing the Leisure Services, and I'll be talking about the issue of developing active recreational facilities in residential neighborhoods. There are some challenges that come with this, of course. You have possibility of bright light pollution, like facilities with lights that at nighttime especially can, when you're playing tennis or something, for example, the lights can leak to unintentional areas like backyards of people's houses or just undesirable places like potholes and stuff. Another challenge of ruining views. You have a facility, it can block the sunlight or just a natural field, and possibility of more traffic as well. Parking spaces being taken, loitering, less privacy. But there is some strategies to combat these for these facilities. And there's, of course, one thing to help with the quietness is hours of operation have certain times where no one's allowed to go to the facilities, or curfews as well, having light curfews, like so light doesn't leak into other people's houses when they're trying to sleep, or and curfews like that prevent people from even going anyway. Also, fences are a very good idea and prevent people from looking in people's backyards where they want privacy. And one thing about fences, you can have strategies to implement on fences that are more desirable to look at. Like you have like landscaping techniques. You can put like vines and stuff to preserve that nature element. So also another thing, go with what the people want. Have meetings with them and see what they want and what they don't want, because that is the most useful thing that the neighbors can tell you. But that is what I have.
All right. Do you have any requests?
Just to have curfews or fences or hours of operation to prevent unsatisfied neighbors.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the public?
Anyway, John Q. Public, Whiteway Drive. I live across from one of the recreation areas, and I would love to see a fence there. It would really help me keep all the people and the soccer balls out of my yard. So thank you for that report, and I appreciate the effort. Thank you.
Anyone else? Of course.
Are we supposed to move this up, or is it? Okay. Okay. I was just wondering if it's a motion to change the facilities we already have, or if it's to create more, because it seems like I wasn't sure if the motion is to fix the problems, the complaints that we already are having, or if it's to improve the city as a whole in terms of adding more recreational facilities. Thanks.
It's more of the issue of maintaining the right rules and guidelines for the facilities that we already have. I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear, but that was the intention there. So.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, we have one more. We are passionate about our fences.
Ernie Mueller, 11250 and a half North 56th Street. I'm wondering where the funding's going to come for this. Is it going to raise? I pay to be at the rec center, and I am a champion pickleball player, by the way. But anyhow, where's this going to come from? These, the money going to come from for these fences. I don't really want my dues to go up just to keep balls from going into someone else's, yard and stuff like that. They could easily return them. So I'm just wondering where's the funding coming from?
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Does our council have any questions? No. I have questions. Would this be over all of our facilities, or just certain ones that we're getting complaints from first?
Yes, I would go with what the people want first. If there isn't any problems, there obviously isn't anything that needs to be fixed. But if there's problems with certain people in the neighborhood that disagree with something, you need to address that first. That's the most important thing. So, yeah.
As a goal, would all of the, like the recreation center and other parks and facilities, at the end of the day, would they all end up having fences if we had the budget for it, or curfews or whatever? Is that the end goal, or just those that have complaints with them?
I would say just the ones that have the complaints. If there isn't, say like a backyard in this particular area, like there is in another area, you want to address the one with the backyard first. And if there's no problem with the other one, yeah, that's fine, because you don't want to push budgets on everything.
Do we have the budget for it within our leisure services already, or do you think that is something we will have to get through either taxes or membership dues?
I wouldn't think so, but that's something that we'd have to look further into.
Okay. Anybody else?
As far as the fencing situation, would you want to fence the whole park or just the parts that are like lined up with houses? Like, is that a possibility to just fence part of the park?
Yes, I think so. I think the main issue is the privacy of other people. So wherever that there's houses coinciding with a facility, that there would be a fence there.
Okay.
What kind of fence are you proposing? I mean, to match the aesthetic of Temple Terrace. These aren't the cheapest white picket fences. I mean, most ones you see here are concrete and built fairly high. Are you proposing that same type of fencing for our parks? Or are you proposing like a simple black metal fence that could be easily erected?
No, not simple, like chain fences are not good, of course. It's not protecting anything except just balls from going into someone's yard. Good, solid fences, not ones that are like concrete. Those are more expensive, but it depends on the budget, of course. But that would fit the aesthetic. But a nice white solid fence pertaining to whatever fits the aesthetic, you know.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion, and I'm going to make a motion that we do more research, that we put some resources into polling the public a little bit and figuring out, you know, what the consensus is among the people about what the actual issues are versus things that are kind of an inconvenience, but are really end up not being that big of an issue in the long run. Just things like that where we can. It just feels like we don't have enough information about, like we all say we want to do what the people want us to do, which is great, but I feel like we just don't really know what that is at this point. So I would motion that we put some resources into doing some research, and that way we can use the money we have in the most efficient way possible to get that stuff done without putting it in places that it's not really needed.
I agree with the councilman, and I think especially we could poll local organizations like the Kiwanis Club or the Masons Lodge, which are known to do public service projects just for the betterment of the community. And I think some of these fences would fall under that category, and that maybe we could eliminate some of the funding by the generous people that do these kinds of projects, and we could look into that.
So you second the motion?
Yes.
Any more comments?
Okay, as far as the curfew side, because I know that we're focusing a lot on fences, but I believe he also mentioned curfew and the light pollution. But going along with that, with the setting of curfews, we could also help, or it'd be safer in the parks at that time, so that we don't have children there late at night. So I don't know if that's included in your motion, or if we're also going to poll the public on that as well.
Yeah, I think we need to do more research, because there's also a cost that comes along with that, because you have to have a way to enforce it. So there's going to be money that gets poured into that also if that's what we decide to do. So I think we just need to think about what the real actual problems are that people are having first, and then we can use the money that we have in the most efficient way possible.
All right.
So just wondering, who motioned this, and what did they motion? And did anybody happen to actually second this motion that we're all talking about?
I motioned that we make some efforts to do research in the community, and Nathaniel seconded it.
Okay.
It was a little bit rocky, but it happened, I promise.
It's gotta be clear on the record, though, that's why I had
Yeah.
some clarification so that it's clear on the record, because if it gets muddy like that, the record says nobody did watch.
Right, thank you. Okay, now we will take a vote. Aye.
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 All right, unanimous. Thank you. We will now speak on the homeless population in city right-of-ways code by our code compliance director.
Good morning, Madam Mayor, and good morning to the City Council members. So my name is Rebecca Branham, and I am the Temple Code Compliance Director. So today I want to address the homeless population in our city. And so I'm going to begin with a recent example to kind of explain how this is happening. So in the last few days, I have been receiving complaints from residents about an aggressive homeless male on the corner of 56 and Fowler. So my staff and I have made contact with the individual because we know that this is a safety issue for him and for others. We informed him that he is in violation of City Ordinance Section 14224, which says that Temple Terrace does not allow soliciting or panhandling. So we have notified the Temple Terrace Police Department of this complaint, and the head of their department, Officer Smith, has responded accordingly. And we are working to provide housing and food resources for the homeless individual. So he has been offered homeless services, and we hope to serve others in similar ways, which will benefit the entire community. So for the issue in more general terms, to address the homeless population, we want to educate individuals and provide the resources and partner with the police department for more resources and assistance for food and housing. So if they're aware of the resources we have, we are hoping to encourage them to take advantage of them. And they tend to congregate near these shelters anyways, so encouraging usage of these resources is one of our main goals. So we are aware that these are very sensitive issues, and sometimes it is a case-by-case situation. Some may refuse help, they may suffer disorders or addictions. So this is more of a police department issue, but we hope to help by enforcing, educating the homeless on the resources that are available to them. So we hope to do the best we can with our resources, like the shelters, the soup kitchens, and the rehabilitation programs, to treat these individuals as we ourselves would want to be treated. So this issue is more of a comment and would not really require a vote. Instead, I just wanted to make the council and city aware that this is what my department is working on. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any comments from the public? All right. Are there any questions from our council members about this?
When you say you're working on educating the homeless population, like what does that look like specifically?
Okay, so when our code compliance directors, when they do their rounds in the different sections of the city, so for example, if they see someone panhandling or soliciting illegally, they have like business cards they can hand out. They know where the resources are, and so just being more aware of reaching out to those individuals and working again with the police department to more enforce those laws and to make sure that each individual is aware, even if that means handing out more things or just calling attention to those issues more.
Do you think this is something that you or your group can go in with some nonprofits and have them be involved in your efforts? Like, as you said, that you've been going around and like looking, I guess, seeing those who are breaking codes and things. But if you brought those that could help them directly with you, like, is that something that can be done?
Yes, and there already are programs that are nonprofit. Like, I know there's a church on Bush Boulevard that is already doing those kind of things. So yes.
Anyone else? I guess my one question is, have the resources that we've extended to the homeless population, are they in general being accepted or denied by this population?
I think it's about half and half, where we've got quite a few that will accept it, but there are a lot of issues with getting them to accept the rules that go along with the shelters. Like they have a curfew, they're expected to clean and to help maintain the area. And so there are a lot of issues with that. But I think if we continue to push their need for it, and kind of like the fire chief was saying, like just making it more aware with those kind of problems.
Right. Do we need to pass any motions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we will discuss city employees and social media with our marketing and communications officer.
My name is Kara Krim. I'm speaking on behalf of the Marketing and Communication Department. My proposal has to do with the current social media plan, so I'm going to hand you guys a copy so you can follow along.
Thank you.
Thank you.
She prepared.
So after reviewing the current social media policy for employees, I have two proposals for additions to the policies. So the first is a brief section on employees making grievances about their jobs or the city on social media. Now, we can't prevent them from doing this. If they want to complain on social media, we can't prevent that. But we want to have a brief section that just encourages the employees to use the proper channels for any complaints or problems they have with their jobs, and that telling them if there are any complaints or allegations that are brought to the attention of the employee, that they will be investigated and addressed. And this is just to prevent them from going on a rant on social media that's unfounded and incorrect, and making them stop and think before posting. So the second has to do with a section about elected city officials. So in the social media policy, there's currently no mention of elected officials having to adhere to these policies. And so we want to add a section, and this will say that they cannot use any private social media accounts for any city business. And that falls under the Sunshine Law, which is basically that any city business, any city information cannot be talked about outside an official capacity. Like they can't go to a coffee shop and talk about it. And so this would just make sure that the city officials are aware and that they cannot use their private accounts for this. It also would help with comments, because there are only a few circumstances that you can take down, like complaints or comments, and with them being on private accounts, it would just make it harder to archive them and to answer them. There would be an option within this section of the policy that tells them that they can open a separate, completely public account for their office, and ask them to let the marketing department know about this. And again, this would have to be completely public, so anyone can access it. And because of this, starting on page 2 under the oversight and enforcement, we would add elected city officials to any of the following rules. This would just be, archive rules and the public nature of their posts. But of course, since the thrust of these changes are about the city council, I would be open to any opinions or comments before making the proposed changes.
Thank you. Do we have any comments from the public? We do.
As a former elected city official, I was wondering whether this is legal. Can you stop a council member from opening up their own social media account? Don't we have free speech?
So this would not be saying that they cannot have a private account. This is just saying that they can't then use the proper or private account to talk about public city business. So it's not saying they can't have an account, just that they can't put official information or any, public information that they talk about in here on that social media account.
Thank you.
I'd like to say, since this is somewhat of a legal question, it would have been kind of nice if the legal department would have had some notice of these changes, so that this question could kind of be determined beforehand. Since it is a fairly obvious question, is this related to free speech that we're supposed to have? Just maybe in the future, I guess.
Well, again, these are proposed changes, and it is not limiting their ability to have account, just what they can talk about it, because they are held to a higher standard, and they do have to have rules on discussing city business on social media.
Can I ask for some clarification as well? So with your proposed rule, does that mean that they cannot discuss anything that we discuss in here, or just like private matters or their opinions about what's being discussed?
I'd have to look into more specifics on the Sunshine Law. So when we were discussing basically like putting it on social media, even information that they discuss in here, under the Sunshine Law is not right because only certain people have access to it. If you have a private account and you only have a certain number of friends, only those friends know about the information discussed, and it's not public like the Sunshine Law says that it has to be.
Are there any more questions or comments from the public? Okay. Any more questions from the council? Okay. I have a question. I didn't get to fully read through this packet, but what would be the, for not following this proposed addendum, what would be the retribution for it or consequence?
I do not have an answer to that question. I'd have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
Can I just recommend that we maybe take like a week, let's say, so that my legal team can really get to the bottom of this and just make sure that before we take a step, we know where we're going to step into. You know what I mean?
That was very official of you. Thank you. Any more questions? All right. Are we going to pass a motion to move forward with this or not?
I would motion that we table the idea, like Jesse suggested. Just kind of give the legal people some time to look over it, make sure that everything's above board, and then kind of revisit it then.
Okay. I guess anybody second that?
Second.
Okay. Now we'll do comments. My one comment is, do we have like any time stamp on that? Giving it a week or a month or?
How much time would you guys need?
I did say a week.
Okay.
Okay.
You would go for a week.
When we're not on the board anymore.
Sound like after today. Okay, yeah, sounds good. Any more comments? All right, let's put this to a vote. Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Our next issue is the homeless people that we have found in the library. Talking to us is our library division director.
Hello, my name is Natalie Johnson, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Library Division Director. The issue I'm presenting today is the impact of homelessness within our public libraries. Within the past several years across America, there have been surveys performed to investigate the numbers of homelessness within cities. Within all of America, it has been found that on any given night, there are 564,708 homeless people. Within our own city, this impacts various areas within, and one such place is the public library. The Temple Terrace Public Library specifically has seen an increase in confrontations between patrons and staff, and then within patrons and patrons. There have been cases of public intoxication, attempts of physical harm to the staff in forms of attempted blows, open bottles of alcohol inside and outside the library, people vomiting or spreading feces in bathrooms, and bushes and shrubs being used as toilet facilities. Additionally, the Plant City Public Library has had an increase in their patrons bringing bags into the library full of personal belongings, and they have made efforts to solve these issues with increased patrols and more security cameras. The Tampa Hillsborough Public Library has reported an uptick in anger, patron confrontations, and a greater need for helping patrons apply for assistance applications. After investigating some of the issues at Temple Terrace's library, I request that the City Council take the steps needed to increase funding for the resources needed and/or security needed to aid and protect the staff and patrons at our library. The first phase we would like to request aid for is in help of removing or reducing foliage which are being used as outside toilets or resting places. Secondly, additional security cameras would be useful for staff to witness more encounters within confrontations. These two would be one-time expenses that would be needed and not ongoing issues needing funds. A third request would be to hire off-duty officers to have a security presence on hand. This is more on the idea that if the security cameras don't help increase like awareness or protection, this is another layer of security that we're requesting. And then the fourth and final request is to hire a social worker to give homeless people a resource and a means in which they could get help for their issues or current situations in terms of living or their employment. These last two requests would be a continual cost, but are not requested without consideration of the benefits to the library and the library's patrons' safety and well-being, as well as the staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the public? All right. Does our council have any questions? I have a question. What is the legality of removing the homeless population if they aren't doing anything illegal, more so like, I guess, hanging around? Is there anything that we can do, or is that a threat at all? Or are you more so focused on aggressive people instead?
I'm not aware of there being issues with homeless people like coming and visiting the library, you know, as long as they're in compliance with the code of conduct. But when it comes to like aggression or like people stealing things, there's been instances of bikes being stolen and different things like that that go against the code of conduct. I think that's more of what we're looking at as being the issue and solutions to those problems.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and then I have a question. When you're looking at the patrol, are you looking for the inside or outside patrol or both?
One or both, probably. I'm not sure which one would be more needed. That would have to be investigated more. I know there have been instances both inside and outside that have been problems.
And are there cameras there already?
There are, I believe there are 8, I think is what the number was. But oftentimes the issues happen off camera and you can't catch them. So the increase in cameras in different locations would be helpful.
Do you think that having police officers there is the best move, or the cameras, given if we had a budget to look at?
I do think that there would be benefits to both. I know that in particular there have been issues of people that are visiting the library and the staff feeling unsafe and having to wait for a police officer to get there is scary. Whereas the security cameras would allow them more ability to see what was going on in order to understand, like, if this person's coming on multiple occasions and causing these problems, this is who's doing it, this is who to look out for. So it depends on the situation more as to which one you would need. There would probably be more investigation needed to determine how often you feel like you need police presence or if cameras would be suitable enough. That's why I petitioned the cameras first. To implement that, to kind of see how that goes. And then if there were still enough issues, we could petition for off-duty officers.
Have there been any examples of actual harm or just close incidences?
As far as I know, there haven't been any physical altercations. I do know that there was one blow issued and almost struck a staff worker one time for something. But as far as I'm aware, there haven't been any physical contact issues.
Have you, or has the library been working with the code compliance director or those in charge of rehabilitation efforts already, or is this something we should look into first?
I'm not entirely sure on that answer. I do know that they have been getting more requests for aid and like people asking, you know, hey, we need assistance with signing up for example, food stamps. But I don't know how much in contact they have been with social workers and stuff in the past.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Do we have a motion to move forward with the issue?
I think the safety of our citizens should always be our first idea at hand, and that's something that we can't look past kind of no matter what the budget is. And that being said, I think the full-time presence of a full-time police officer might deter some people from this facility that's supposed to be very family-oriented, very little kid-oriented, in growing your knowledge and your family. And for that reason, I do raise the motion that we look first into the security cameras, that we make this place safer, because it is an essential part of our community, and the safety of this cannot be overlooked. So I think the security cameras are a great idea, and I motion to look into those and add them.
I second that motion.
Okay. Do you have any comments? I have a comment. I would agree with this, but I would also make sure to have a physical time limit after we put in these cameras to see if that does any good, and then come back to this issue and see if there's anything that we can do further beyond that.
May I remind the council she's also asking for some landscaping changes?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Landscaping? Comments? Anything about that?
Do we have any sort of, can I ask you to restate what your landscape request was?
So the shrubs and stuff outside have been used to serve as outside bathroom facilities. And then there have also been people hiding things behind bushes, hoping to, you know, protect their belongings or whatever. So our theory is that if we remove those shrubs and those things to be hidden, that would eliminate some of those issues. That's the hope also.
Do you think with the addition of the security cameras that will immediately cut down on the use of this foliage as a restroom stop, or do you think that inevitably the bushes need to be removed?
Well, considering that a lot of the people that are homeless do happen to have mental, like, issues and stuff, or being intoxicated and that kind of thing, the presence of a security camera isn't necessarily going to stop them always just from using that, just because it happens to be convenient there. There is this chance that you could actually catch them and, you know, tell them, hey, like, that's not, you know, acceptable, of course, but I don't know how much that would actually stop someone from using it once with it being available.
Anything else?
I would like to revise my motion that we revisit in 2 weeks with the security cameras after they've been implemented to see the results and if the need for a full-time guard needs to be implemented. And I also recommend that we look into cutting down some of the bushes, but not all, to remain some beauty, and that we see if that cuts down the use. If that doesn't, then I recommend that we cut down all the bushes, but somehow make it aesthetically pleasing.
Thank you. Does anybody second that motion?
I second.
Any more comments? All right. Well, let's put that to a vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you very much. And then our last order of new business and board reports is our vaccine mandates from our council discussion. So each of us will get to express our viewpoints, and I say would you like to start?
Boy. Here in the city of Temple Terrace, obviously safety is our first idea. And behind that kind of comes freedom. And that's the idea really with this issue nowadays is how much of your freedom do you have to sacrifice for safety? Is wearing the mask a detriment to your freedom, or is it an increase to the health of others? And how much are people willing to go with that? We've had several states, such as Texas and Florida, both ease up on their mandates to the fact where there almost are none at all, despite the federal government still requiring them. And the cases in these states are hit or miss, depending on if they're in a big residential area or in a smaller town. And so for a city like Temple Terrace, where we are attached to Tampa, and we do have a lot of traffic coming through here, especially with the 2 colleges that we have, I think it's important that we look into these facts and that we really examine the data to see, because there is a balance that we need to figure out about how much of our freedom are we willing to part with to do these vaccine mandates, or whether mask mandates are optional. Recently, our mask mandate was pulled down to optional due to a decrease in case positivity from 20 to 4.5%. And if these cases keep going down, I think we have a good basis that we can slowly start to remove restrictions and open things back up to normal, more so than they already are. But if these cases continue to rise again, I do firmly believe that measures need to be in place with the masks. As far as mandating the vaccine, I do not find that to be a legal thing to mandate on this community, but I do agree with the use of masks and protecting yourself if that be your own volition. But as far as with the vaccine mandate, I do not agree with the legality.
Great, thank you.
Okay. I think the first and most important question that we should ask before we get into this matter is this really a matter of personal health, and when does public health and safety take precedence of that? I think an important fact to also note is that Temple Terrace already has a very high vaccination rate. I believe it's in the 80s at least right now, and obviously that's increasing daily. So I think Temple Terrace is off to a very good start with that, and I think there's a lot of questions as far as what is legal with vaccination mandates. So my proposal, I guess, would be, since we already have such a high vaccination rate, and so we can create incentives or things for people to want to get the vaccine, but I don't think it'd be smart for us to just directly say that we're mandating it for certain employees, because there is a side of personal choice, but again, public safety. So I would propose that if these numbers do continue to rise, which they're going down for now, but that we would not require vaccinations, but if someone is vaccinated, that those that are non-vax would wear masks while indoors.
Great, thank you. In my own opinion, one of the important issues that is not being discussed as much is the emphasis of our local government in this issue, not just state and federal government, which has lost a lot of the trust from the people, and especially media sources these days has also lost a lot of trust from our public. And so something that the local government is really responsible for keeping people safe, but also keeping the trust of our community. And so in a place that's so divided, it's extremely important for us to do what we can to protect each other, but also to make sure that our community still respects and trusts us and the decisions that we make based on the information that we have. In the last 20-ish months or so, the medical information that we have continues to change, and in terms of vaccinations and the history behind it, a lot of times information that we have now will change than what we have in the future, and hindsight is always something great to have, but since we do not have that already, I think that for the greater good of the community around us, giving that personal choice while also educating, encouraging real education and not just biased media sources, but encouraging education through medical professionals with the most up-to-date information, as well as encouraging vaccination and mask wearing, and the outlets to go get this is extremely important for us, but also not to mandate until we have had a little more time to see more information rise and more medical tests being done. Even though that a lot of our community is really divided on this issue, the important thing is that we do what is best for everyone. And so giving this opportunity for both having a choice, but also encouraging trusting others and being real citizens is one of the most important things to do at this time.
I think there's bits of what my other fellow council members have said that I agree with. I think that we've talked a lot with different issues today about the idea that, you know, we need to be doing for people what the public wants for themselves. That they would tend to know better than us in most cases what is best for them. And I think that mandating a vaccine doesn't necessarily go along with that purview. I think that there are some people that should get the vaccine, and I think that those people are getting the vaccine because they have done the risk assessment for themselves and realized I probably should get this shot because it's going to be better for me health-wise in the long term. And I think that there are other people that have done the risk assessment for themselves and said, I don't think this is something I'm comfortable doing right now. And I think that we should allow people to do that risk assessment for themselves. I do like what Michaela said about incentives. I think that there is a place for potentially incentivizing people to get vaccinated, like with stipends or things like that. But I think ultimately we have to be careful that we're not taking away people's ability to assess themselves, assess their own situation, and decide whether or not that's something that they need to do or should do.
Incentives matter. People will, if they want the vaccination, they will get it. Because if they get it, they're safer, they don't have to wear a mask, things like that. I think what I have witnessed is people will and have gone to get vaccinations because those people have understood what it does. We're mostly talking about the people. So this doesn't directly affect those people already. They just may have to show paperwork. It's the people that don't want to get it that we're talking about. And I think the incentive of if you don't get the vaccination, you'll have to wear a mask, along with a bunch of other little things, is incentive to get most of the population, I think, to have a vaccination. I think over time it would be slow, but if we didn't enforce a mandate for vaccination, I think over time people would start to figure out how all of this is working. And we've seen that over the past 2-3 years. Feels like 20. I think the incentives matter. So I agree on a lot of things y'all have said.
All right. Does anybody have a motion to bring forward with this issue?
Can I add a comment before? Is that not allowed?
I don't actually know. Oh, it doesn't say it on the. Otherwise, I would have let it. I don't know. I don't actually.
So can I comment?
Can she comment before the motion or not?
Normally you would have public comment prior to a motion, but.
Ask for public comment first.
Okay.
Why don't we have public comment?
Hey, you know what? Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Is there any comments from the public?
You guys are getting off too easy. This is not realistic. So, my name is Tom Baroni. And I know you know me. I'm a longtime mediocre city employee who always causes trouble. So I want you to take into consideration this. All of you elected officials, none of you are on city insurance. So while you go home and you're on your own insurance that you get from your regular employer or your whatever, you're all well-to-do, right? Those of us who work for the city have to pay premiums for lousy health insurance. The city managers just tried to get the rates raised tonight, and you kick that down the road because you're cowardice, right? So I want you to consider this. Though at the same time that you're raising our insurance rates, you're talking about everybody's individual freedom here to be free from a vaccine mandate. Well, the truth of the matter is while James is executing his individual freedom to not have a vaccine, he winds up in the hospital, racks up $100,000 of medical bills that's used to raise our insurance rates next year for the city employees, and me, my family, and I have to pay for his right not to be vaccinated. So I think, and this doesn't affect any of you, so you don't care. You're taking the easy way out. You're doing what politicians always do. You're saying a lot of words and you're saying nothing, right? So I want to know how you can tell us that you appreciate the citizens or the employees, and you always tell us, oh, we just love our employees, but when you get an opportunity to do something that's really helpful to the employees, you just talk platitudes.
Well said. We're still on the job, sir.
That's real.
Thank you.
I had a real conversation for you. My name is Andy Ross. No. Here's a question that I've got for you. If in fact you were to mandate that city employees were to get vaccinated, and my personal choice is not to get vaccinated, am I going to lose my job? How would you handle that? And how would you direct your city manager to handle that situation when you have to lay off people because of the mandate that you now have put in place?
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
John Q. Public again, Whiteway Drive. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for letting me address you twice. Again, I feel like a mask and vaccination should be mandatory for all city employees and everyone entering any city facility. And the reason being that a mask and a vaccine is just like, for the virus, just like a fence to keep soccer balls out of my yard. So I want those in place so me and my family can go to the rec center and other city facilities and feel safe that other people are vaccinated and doing everything they can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
So my question is, if you were to mandate this, how do you plan on handling the people that have either religious objections or health care considerations to take place? That's my only question.
So the option is really legally, if you're not going to get the vaccine, what you can do is stay masked in the building and then submit to a regular schedule of COVID tests. I would think it's weekly or bi-weekly maybe. And so there is that option for you.
And there's also the...
Okay, yeah, so the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has approved two mandatory, or to go with their mandatory COVID vaccine policies, and the two exceptions would be a disability provision and if you have a religious belief. So those two would have to be proved, but again, going along with what our city attorney has said, there would be other precautions that you would have to take, as well as the choosing to be masked and weekly COVID testing.
Anybody else?
In regards to the premiums question about what you pay for everyone else, I don't think this applies just to health premiums. Your taxes are being used to fix the roads that everyone drives on, whether their car is a heavy car and is bad for the road, or whether their car is a light car and not bad for the road. Your taxes are being used on your property taxes and on your income to pay for, well, not here in Florida on income, but let's assume we're in another state. And they're being used to pay for the luxuries of other people that your money is being used for. And with the premiums, yes, they're being used to pay for the health of other people, but so are all of the other taxes. And while I'm not here to debate the use of your taxes and where they're going and what you pay on the city, the county, federal, state level, I do think that it's a bit unwarranted to assume that these premiums are just being recklessly used for other people when they are helping out a lot of people, just as taxes and other things are meant to be used for.
I would like to make a comment on that. As far as the current city employees and their health insurance works right now, that is what is happening is when people are hospitalized for COVID or for other reasons, and it drives the cost up, it drives everyone's cost up. And when we have a case like this where it could be prevented, that would be a way to keep costs down in the future. And this is a preventable thing that we can deal with. And if so, yes, there are other things that will happen, and you will be paying for other people's health insurance. That's how it works. But this is preventable, and we could keep costs down.
Anyone else? Okay. What?
Do we get comments now?
Go for it.
Okay, so then I have one question about as far as private businesses, because if we're talking about individual rights, if you own a private business, I think they should have the choice to choose whether, like if we choose not to put in place vaccine mandates, I think that those that own private businesses should be allowed to if they would like to, because it is their private business. And going back, I guess I have a question for Councilmember Kimball. What about those who cannot get vaccinated? One of like those that have like health issues that prevent them from being, because they don't really have a choice in the matter, but all of us have a choice on whether or not to get vaccinated or to wear a mask or things like that.
In relation to what? Like what part of what I said is the questioning?
The focus on
like personal risk assessment?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing where they can't get it because of personal things that they have. So I would not feel comfortable mandating a vaccine for somebody who, and obviously there are exceptions like you talked about earlier, but somebody who can't, like physically, it's just not, they're not able to get it. And it's kind of brings up a discussion about, if they're wanting to get the vaccine and can't, and that becomes a whole nother conversation, but I wouldn't feel comfortable mandating something like that for them if they're like physically they just can't. But to me, it's the difference between like somebody who has a doctor's note that says they can't get the vaccine and somebody who has done their own risk assessment and said, I don't think this is good for me to get for, reason X, Y, and Z, whatever that is. I don't know that it's really our place to tell them that those reasons are invalid necessarily if they've done that assessment for themselves. Now, if they start then telling other people, oh, you should or shouldn't do it based on X, Y, and Z, that becomes an issue. But
okay, and then I guess a follow-up question for any of you, or just one to think about is it those that cannot be vaccinated, like, is it not like in our control? Like, can we not do something to help in that, like with the whole vaccinations, or I guess going back to our incentives that we're trying to implement, because they're part of our public and those are people that we should be protecting, but they cannot protect themselves.
I would say in terms of incentives, you said that 80% or so of our population is vaccinated, and there's definitely a percent that cannot get vaccinated. I think in other vaccines that we've seen in the past, there's usually like 5 to 10% of the population, depending on like what the vaccine is, does not get it. And having that herd immunity allows those who can't get it to be protected, as you've said. But the question of incentives, how effective do we believe that would be? Especially, I can't remember who said it, but in terms of your own personal health, that should be an incentive in itself to get a vaccine. And the like negative push would be like wearing your mask or not being allowed in certain areas without a vaccination, or private business laws or private business decisions. All of those things would be incentives whether or not to get a vaccine or not. So the question would be, if we did something monetary or some sort of law, how helpful would that really be in practicality? Yeah.
For clarification, when you mentioned allowing private businesses to enforce their own rules, were you talking about for the employees, for the customers on the facilities, or both?
Mainly for, I guess that'd be up to the business owners who own the business, like whether or not they mandate that their employees get vaccinated or not.
Okay.
I have a question. Is there like a certain time that I should just asking? Yes. What time?
No time, it's just if you feel conversation is getting out of hand or
Okay.
you've gone too long.
I wanted to make sure. Anyways, continue.
I can address this question here. It says, how would you address the health, safety, and welfare of the city's workforce against an individual's right to have a personal choice on his or her health? My answer is very carefully. And that's my 2 cents for it.
If it's all right with the leader, I'd like to go ahead and motion.
All right, what would you motion?
I motion that a vaccine mandate, while it might be helpful, is not necessary, but that we as stewards of Temple Terrace should encourage health by encouraging masks and possibly incentivizing the vaccine or other ways that can increase our health and livelihood while at the same time not infringing upon others.
Okay. Anyone second that motion? Oh. Both of us.
Can I create a motion?
Absolutely.
Okay. Or is that okay? No second.
If there's no second, the motion dies for lack of a second, and then you can make a motion.
Okay. So my motion would be, we do not implement a mandatory vaccination at the moment, but that we require those that are not vaxxed to wear masks while indoors if the mask mandate were to come back, because right now we've taken that off, right? But that private businesses can create or impose a mask mandate, or I guess we're giving the freedom to the private businesses to mandate masks if they deem necessary.
Okay. Anyone?
I'll second.
All right. Do we have any comments from the council members?
I'd like to put emphasis on your part that said at the moment, because everything regarding the situation is changing so rapidly. I think it's important that this is the decision we're making at this moment right now. But of course, circumstances can change in the future.
So, anyone else?
I think it may set a bad precedent if the council is going to make a motion and then send out that we are giving some right to the people. I think that might be the reverse of what we're trying to do here in America. So we can say this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to enforce, and the rest of it is left open. The best way to go about this.
Yeah, I agree. I think just, from the semantic side, like maybe assuring the private businesses that they continue to have the rights they have and not saying, oh, like, we're giving you the right to decide what you want to do. Like, they have the right to do that, and ensuring that we're not taking that away from them.
You can withdraw your motion and withdraw the second.
Okay.
If you want to go forward with it, or you can take the vote on what's on the table.
Okay, I'll withdraw my motion.
I'll withdraw the second, I guess.
Okay, would anybody like to entertain?
You can change your motion.
Okay. So the part, can I clarify with our city attorney, the part that I have to take off, or that is unclear or would set the bad precedent, whatever, would be the private business part. We would just leave that open. We wouldn't mention that in the motion. Yes. Okay. Okay. So moving forward with the new motion, is that right now, under the circumstances we're under at the moment, we do not pass a vaccination mandate, but that if deemed necessary, we can come back to this. And those, I don't know, the whole mask side, I guess, if mask mandates were to come back, those that were not vaccinated would be required to wear masks inside.
Okay. Does any?
Second that motion.
All right. Any council comments? My comment would be that we emphasize or just add to that motion like a timestamp of when we revisit it, because it is constantly changing. But how often? How often should we revisit it? Or like how much of a return in cases are we going to get before we have to revisit this motion to see what we're going to do about it? That is something I would like to figure out. Nobody? Okay.
With what Michaela said about 80% of our community being vaccinated and very well protected, I think it would make sense that we assume that there's 20% that are not. And so I think if cases climb to above or at 10%, which would be half of the people that have not protected themselves, I think measure needs to be taken. So should cases or positivity rate taken in, because there are people visiting here as well, so positivity taken in from our test result labs, should it exceed 10%, I think we should revisit this problem, or if the mask mandates do come back.
Would that just be 10% of those being tested for COVID, or just 10% of the population of?
I think 10% of being tested.
10% of being tested. Okay. Any other comments?
Wait, that seems low. Doesn't seem right.
So a clarifying question: do you mean 10% of the people that are tested that are not vaccinated, or 10% of the people that are tested are in general?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because most people
still get it, but it will not be, fatal. Most likely is what it.
Right, that's what I was thinking. And most people going to get COVID tested have a reason for suspecting that they have COVID, so you're going to have much higher positivity rates when you're testing. So, go ahead.
Can I propose that we say just an increase in cases in general? Just like, I don't know what percentage would be.
It would have to be like a fairly substantial amount if we're at a fairly low rate right now.
Okay. I mean, I think the 10% would be fine for now. So if we see a 10% increase in the cases, that we revisit this.
I agree.
So you're revising your motion to add the 10% clause.
Yes, I revised my motion to state that we are not implementing a vaccination, and that those that are not vaccinated must wear a mask if the mask mandate were to return, and that we will revisit this issue if there is a 10% increase in the COVID cases in our community.
Right.
Seconded again.
Okay. Let's take this to a vote.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
I say name, but I guess it doesn't matter. Now we will move on to our city manager's report. does our city manager have anything to report?
Yes, I would like to share some information about an upcoming event we have on October 30th at 6 p.m. at the field next to the Family Recreation Center. All the public is invited to fun and games.
Thank you. Now our city attorney's report. Do you have anything to report?
No.
All right. Do I read all this or just? Okay, that's what I thought. Our meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.